Hi, everybody. My name is John DePietro.
And I'm Bob Zagami with the Camper Report Show.
And in this edition of the Camper Report Show, I'm going to be talking with Heather Ryan, who's a full-time RVer who prepares taxes for full-time RVers. I think you're going to like what you hear.
Probably gives them good advice, too. I've got a great interview with Jim Phelan. He's the founder of a company called AirSkirts, and they make inflatable skirts for skirting around your RV in the winter. Very creative and very functional.
Let's not skirt that issue of cold when it comes to RVing. Those stories and much more tonight on this edition of the Camper Report Show. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Camper Report Show. My name is John DePietro, and my colleague Bob Zagami and I want to go over a lot of the news that took place in the RV industry. And Bob, one of the things that I've noticed is a few weeks ago, you had on one of the founders of Alliance RV right here on this show, and they just announced that they are going to hire 650. That's 650 new employees in the next couple of years. That really shows growth.
Well, they've accelerated their expansion program, and they are now putting up building number 3 and building number 4 at the same time. Building 3 is well on its way. Building 4 was just recently started. So they're expanding, and they will have a new line of lightweight fifth wheels coming out later this year. So they're probably ahead of schedule and ahead of plan of where they thought they were going to be.
I know at one time they said they wanted to hire 325 people and then already reached that. And then they moved that number. They actually doubled that number to 650. So that certainly shows growth. Now, the other thing I noticed is Grand Design, which is one of the iconic, if you will. Can't really say iconic because they're less than 10 years old.
They're only 8 years old.
Less than 10 years old. But they have gotten a legendary following. And I think one of the things that's important that they've done was created a website called GDRV and then the number 4 Life. Grand Design for Life for their Grand Design Nation, which is their very loyal group of Grand Design owners. It seems as though that's what all of the major manufacturers are doing now, is having these, I don't know if you want to call them focus groups, but groups with a wide variety of different meanings.
Well, I think it's important from another aspect too. You know, they've had a tremendous program for dealer collateral and how-to videos for the dealers for a number of years. They've done a great job on pushing out their product information, sales information. And a lot of that is certainly consumer oriented, wasn't produced that way. So they're going to take a lot of those assets and bring them over to Grand Design Nation so that they also have access to them. So it's great if you're looking for a new product, you want to see specific floor plans, you want to see a how-to video and stuff. So they're bringing the family closer to home. They've done very well on their rallies. And like I said, they're only 8 years old, and they are the premier fifth wheel out there right now. They're getting great competition from Alliance, and I'm sure Alliance has got them in their gun sights. They set the standard.
And as we all know, people in the RV industry, meaning RV consumers, they like to be part of a community. So this really forwards that, this advances that opportunity for them to be part of that community. And speaking of community, FMCA is a well-known and well-recognized community, and they had their one of their rallies last week in Georgia. We had thought that the numbers were going to be a little bit leaner based upon early indications, but bring us up to date with the numbers that they finally ended up with.
Yeah, I'm delighted to make a correction in our numbers. We thought 600 rigs, they got 1,124 rigs, they got about 2,400 people. And what was really interesting, and I think you're seeing a little bit of a shift in momentum for them. They had been going downhill for a long time, losing members and not being able to bring first-time buyers into the program or even the towables. But 2 significant events took place at this convention. They got a lot of first-time buyers. I mean, people like Tiffin and Integra, Rev Group, they had products on display, and they said they talked to an awful lot of first-time buyers. That means younger people, even in the motorhome category, are looking at products for the first time.
Yep.
That's significant. That has not always been the case.
And that is a big change because, again, younger people don't necessarily go to the big units that are generally on display, the Class A's at FMCA. So to see that shift take place is certainly the exact opposite of what we've been hearing for the last couple of years, with the Class B's being the fastest selling category in the RV.
Yeah. And all the manufacturers with the big motorhomes reported great sales. Another interesting factor for the convention was Alliance RV was there with 6 fifth wheels, 3 Paradigm fifth wheels and 3 Valor toy haulers. That I don't remember dealers or manufacturers displaying fifth wheels before, so they had the show all to themselves. Yep. And they also reported a high level of interest in their fifth wheel products. They also noted, when Coley Brady mentioned it, that 15% of the rigs that were in attendance, of those 1,124, that 15% were towables. Now, this is an effort they started in 2017 of trying to get towables into FMCA. And they were lucky if they got 1 or 2 people that showed up at the rally in a fifth wheel. So now once one manufacturer shows up and did well, then others are going to think about exhibiting. They're going to Wyoming in July for their next convention. But the fact that 15% of your audience was in fifth wheels, and lots of times fifth wheel people, when they get a little bit older and doing more full timing, they go to a motorhome. So I'm delighted that we were wrong, and I'm excited for FMCA because this may have put a real push on for them to get serious about bringing these people into their association and getting back on the right track.
Well, let's set the record straight. You were wrong. I wasn't wrong because I didn't say anything.
That's right. I said it. Right.
You were wrong on that.
That's correct. Great.
But you only based your wrongness on what the projections were, and
we had reports from a couple of sources. Exactly. They projected that. Yeah.
So maybe neither of us were wrong, or if anything, you were a little bit wrong, and I'm completely exonerated.
Well, no, I got taken to the cleaners in one of the comments on that show. And one of the women, I think her name was Cynthia, said, "You're off base. There was at least double that at the show." Yeah, so I went and did our homework. We did some stuff, and we're not afraid to admit when we're wrong.
Exactly.
I mean, we're good, but we're not perfect. We're supposed to be, but
But there was an interesting story that appeared recently that I stole from our friends at RV Pro. And when you talk about the RV industry, you have to talk about the great demand for new employees, because Elkhart is like at 107% employment. Okay. And you know what? When you get new bodies, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's good, because new bodies with people that don't have the right work ethic can do a company bad, as opposed to just fill space and allow the production line to go a little bit smoother. So this story that actually you dug up is called 10 Reasons to Hire a Veteran. And we're going to go through some of those as time allows. But the first reason that I saw that they said here was the ability to work 24/7 and 365. There are no prima donnas in the military. And when you're in the military and you're an Air Force veteran, I was lucky enough to get a high draft number, and our country was lucky enough to have me get a high draft number, to not have me defend them. Okay. But it's not like, okay, guys.
You wouldn't want, wait a minute, you wouldn't want to be in the foxhole next to me?
Yeah, exactly. No, wait a minute. In Italy, I probably would be, because you and I would be checking out the restaurants, so that on days that people had off, we'd know where to tell them where to go. But the ability to work.
John, I gained 30 pounds in my first year in it.
Even with basic training,
and haven't lost it in the 50 years, 60 years since then.
Yeah, exactly. But there's no weekends off in the military. So you get people that have that mentality. They'll work when they're told to work. And I think that's important. How about your point?
Well, they're teachers, and especially the career people that are in the service, because the service turns over a lot of people, and some people only stay for 2 years or 4 years. They're in a continuing teacher mode, and they also understand the needs of learning quickly, correctly, getting the job done right. Whether if you're fixing an airplane or a tank, doesn't make a difference. You don't get a chance to make a mistake on those things. You're dealing with people's lives.
Yep. And they're not afraid to get their hands dirty, because when you're in combat or when you're in the military, even if it's a non-combat period of time, you're going to do dirty work as you prepare for combat, and hopefully it doesn't happen, but you will get your hands dirty, and you will, realize that no job is below you.
Yep. And diversity makes great teams. It's kind of sad what we see going on in the country today with a lot of the accusations about racism and different ethnic groups or different sexual orientation. We never had that. When I spent 4 years in the service, 2 in Italy, 2 years in Turkey. I had Black roommates. I had Indian roommates. I didn't have any female roommates because we didn't have any females in the service at that time. But
you would have welcomed it.
Yeah, but we didn't even talk about diversity. They were just the same as you.
Yep.
And when you're on one side of the line,
yep,
and you're looking at the enemy on the other side of the line, you really don't care who's next to you, as long as they can shoot straight and come out alive when you're done. Yep. So yeah, diversity is not, it was natural.
I'm skipping a little ahead here for time purposes, but they understand, and this is so important, they must work their way up. So many young people come into a company today, and the bosses all say they all want to be a vice president. They want to be hired at the vice president level and work their way up. But you don't do that in the military. You start at the lowest level and then work your way up, right, Bob?
Yeah. And they take stress with a smile. I never thought of this one before until I read it. But one of the comments through my business career that people would say about me is they say, nothing bothers you. You don't stress out about anything. And it goes right back to that, because after you've been through battles, after you've been in the service and you worked under stressful conditions, none of this other stuff comes close.
Yep. And they understand a work-life balance for their team. In other words, they're not going to make people work crazy hours. And if they do work crazy hours because of that, then they realize they've got to take some time off at the other end. And talk about volunteering there for a second.
Yeah. And they volunteer. I came out of the service doing a lot of volunteer work, as many other veterans have. They love to do it.
I think this is so important. You see young people, they will walk by trash right in their own hallway of their own business. Veterans will pick up the trash. One of the first things that they tell you to do is, as you walk along, clean your area up. So you know what? You'll pick up trash, because when the younger people see the older people pick up trash, what do? They do the same thing. Yep.
Yeah. And that was true. I mean, you never saw a dirty military base. At least I didn't, because that was the thing. You come out of the barracks in the morning and you walk down the street, and if there was something there, you just automatically picked it up.
Yeah. Why don't you take the last one too, about training the replacements?
Yeah. And they train their replacements. Again, training and education is important on the back end as much as teaching it is on the front end. They're trained, and they're trained well, because everybody knows their job and does it the right way.
So 10 reasons to hire a veteran, regardless of the type of business that you may be in or may have responsibility for hiring. Think about those 10 tips. So with that being said, we've got a great show lined up, 2 great features. It's John DePietro and Bob Zagami. This is what, Bob?
The Camper Report Show.
And we'll be back with more right after this.
I'm Jesse from Outsiders Calling, and I love adventurous family travel with my wife Jenny and our son Tucker.
For over 3 years, we've RV'd across the U.S. and Mexico, and it's tough to find places that meet all our needs.
Now we plan our trips with the RV Trip Wizard, pull it up in the RV Life app, select it, and go.
It helps us discover amazing new places to grow together as a family.
RV Trip Wizard with the RV Life app is an awesome trip planning combination.
You can get both for one low annual price. Check out rvlife.com to learn more.
And welcome back to the Camp Report Show. My name is John DePietro. And you know, folks, there are certain things that we don't like to talk about in any aspect of our life. And you know what? Death and taxes are two of those things. And we're going to break a cardinal rule about what we should talk about and talk about a topic that a lot of people don't take seriously when they become full-time RVers. And joining me today, all the way from Florida, via Colorado, via Worcester, via a bakery where she used to make a lot of dough. Now she talks people into keeping a lot of their dough. Help me welcome Heather Ryan. Heather, welcome to the Camp Report Show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, you know what? You bill yourself on your big marquee as the tax queen. And you know what? It's just such a very important consideration to take that when you're going to go full-timing and don't have a certain state call your own, they probably have tax consequences that are different depending upon every different circumstance. Would you say that's the case?
That's true. I will add though, even as a full-timer, you have to belong to a state. You still have to have a domicile somewhere. So, yeah.
So even though you're homeless, you have to tell people that you do have a home.
Yeah, you do. I mean, someone has to issue your driver's license. Someone has to give you tags for your RV or your towed vehicles. So someone has to claim you.
So how did you find your niche in this area? Tell me that, and then I'm going to just go back a little bit and get you a little bit of your background. But tell us how you found your niche in this particular area of the RV world.
Let's see. I guess it's just we hit the road and just started talking to people, other full-timers, especially working age, younger RVers maybe. And they just had all these questions. And I was like, I can answer all these questions. Why am I not helping, these folks? Since I live the lifestyle and I understand the loopholes and sometimes the struggles with even just getting connected on a call, it just felt right. So,
you used a very interesting word, loophole. One of the things that you want to figure out in your tax world is what loopholes, not necessarily that you can evade or avoid, but certainly take advantage of, because, loopholes are really legal ways of reading the law to your advantage. Where did you get the idea that you could provide a service like this and become full-time with it?
Well, I did taxes prior to hitting the road full-time, and I did have an office that I did see I wouldn't say most, but several of my clients would come to the office and they liked that hands-on. When we hit the road, I just said I need to pivot, and it's okay if I lose some of those clients. And I did. I lost probably 25% of my clients that came to me in person. Several of them did transition to being remote, and they were okay with that. And they thought it was cool that I was changing my lifestyle, and were maybe a little jealous. I don't know, but they kept with me. And I just thought, well, since I'm remote, why can't I help other remote workers? And it just kind of fell into place as I started to meet people and gain a client base in that area. So,
yeah. So it should be said that this is the time of year when you probably never saw daylight or sunshine, right?
I try to have some work-life balance. Yeah, I try to have some work-life balance. So, yeah.
Look forward to that April 15th date that you can actually have a life again.
Yeah, I mean, I try to have balance so that it's not like that. Even when we were stationary, I had an office. I did work on Saturdays to help people that would work, full time and had needed an appointment on the weekends. But I still tried to have some balance there. I still like to be outside and in nature. I think that's why I chose this RV lifestyle in general, to travel and explore. So maybe a little less during tax season, but I still like to.
Yeah. Just before you hit the road, how much prep work did you have to do book wise, as far as not necessarily about tax wise, but learning the whole aspect of full-time life, and then realizing that there's a business side of it as well, if you're going to go full-time and still, have a job, revenue.
Yeah. I mean, I had to learn the rules around deducting RV. How does that qualify? Does it qualify? Taking mileage for traveling, it's stuff like that changes. When you live in a tiny house, it's hard to have a home office because that home office needs to be 100% dedicated, and what RV has enough space. So, I mean, I just had to really think through some of those little challenges and kind of do some research. I looked up court cases to understand previously how they've taught things or handled items, especially related to RVing. So
now it says on your website that you're an enrolled agent. Tell us, Heather, what that means.
So an enrolled agent is licensed by the IRS. So I can practice taxes or represent taxpayers in any state in the United States, versus a CPA or even a tax attorney is licensed by that state. So they're going to understand most likely those state tax laws the best. That doesn't mean that they can't, learn others, but the IRS just allows me to practice anywhere.
Okay, so it means you have credentials. You're not just thinking, this is not like, well,
correct.
I know needlework or I know baking, so I'm going to talk about baking from an RV. I mean,
yeah, so you have to sit for 3 exams. I have to pass all 3 exams with a certain, passing score. And then every year I have to sit for continuing education. I have to have 30 credits for continuing education.
Okay, so on your website, I hate to use the word cheat, especially when I'm talking about taxes. I don't like to use the word. But it says a tax write-off cheat sheet. Is that still available?
I actually changed the name, funny enough. I changed it to a checklist, and I expanded it a little bit because it actually just gives, for somebody who owns a business and works from the road, it just helps them to understand some of the expenses they can take as a business owner. And so I actually added, I guess, a glossary kind of all the different categories and what fits into each category. So
can you give us
expanded?
Can you give us a couple of them? A couple major things, like the ones that come to mind the fastest, as far as I'm full-time in an RV and I've got my own business. What are 2 major considerations that I should be aware of?
Well, insurance is probably one of the biggest things. Someone who has business insurance, liability insurance. I'm trying to think of other. I mean, the biggest thing is really any kind of office expense. So like having a computer or software that you use for the business, maybe even a camera if you're out taking pictures, or videography, stuff like that.
Okay. So if you're doing YouTube videos from the road, any equipment that you would use, again, you'd probably have to prorate it to the, let's listen to those words I'm using, Heather. I can't even believe I'm using these words.
You're very technical here.
Right, I know it. When you spent your whole life in radio and TV, you know how to fake it to make it sound like you know what you're talking about when you really have no clue.
There you go.
Okay, as long as my doctors aren't in that boat, then I'm okay.
There you go.
If you're going to,
so yeah, you can split it.
Split it. Okay.
You can split the cost.
Okay.
So like if your laptop is 50% for business, and then 50% you're using it to check your personal email or to watch Netflix or whatever, order off Amazon, I don't know, whatever you do in there, you can do 50-50, or if it's 75, I mean, it just depends on the individual.
Okay, well, I'm glad you said that, because this computer that we're working through right now, I just bought, and it's a $2,000 device, and I only use it for work. So I never thought of that, but when on April 14th, when I call my accountant to do our tax, sometimes I give them an extra day and go on the 13th. Did they extend this year yet? No. It's 2021.
They have not extended. The only state that has extended is Texas because of their deep freeze that they got.
Okay.
They did extend Texas.
Okay. So then I'll take those into consideration. I'm told that you also wrote a book. Okay.
I did write a book. taxes for RV owners. Again, it's geared towards working costs, working age, whatever term you want to use. Someone who runs a business, it helps them with expenses, talking about mileage, talking about, different states, do you owe taxes to them, talks about self-employment tax.
One of the things I saw in it, it's even a solar write-off, right? If you have solar for your RV.
There is a solar write-off, and funny enough, since that book was published, they have extended that.
Oh, extended
credit.
it.
So,
okay.
Yes.
Okay. See, a lot of people aren't aware of the fact that even if you buy, if you have an older RV that you don't have the solar panels on top, but you bought those, what do they call them, briefcase or suitcase solar panels that you put when you're stationary. I was, again, not aware of that till I did a little bit of viewing your website to see that was the case. So, we've learned things already right now. Well, actually 3 things: your video camera, your still camera, your computer, your solar. Anything else obvious, Heather, that I'm missing?
I mean, it's really industry specific. It's depending on what the person's doing for work. So
Okay.
I like to say, what is your job? Like when you sit down to do your work, what are you using? So what do you need to do that?
Okay. That's excellent. That's excellent. What other things would you say to RVers that, this pandemic thing has allowed, it's devastated so many industries like restaurants and, hotels. But as you know, the RV industry has exploded. In fact, we're doing another show after this. Thor, which is the largest RV manufacturer in the United States, their profits for their second quarter, which ended January 31st, their sales are up 36%.
Wow.
Find a business that's up 36%. So, the pandemic has been bad to a lot of people, but it's been good to this RV industry. And what has a lot of people have been allowed to hit the road because they couldn't go into their companies anymore. So they're working from home.
Yes.
And a lot of people have taken that home and taken the home on the road. So for people that still are employed by, the same company that they were a year and a week ago, okay, do they have any additional considerations now that they are on the road, working from the road, but still working for the same company?
So unfortunately, no.
No.
The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2018 eliminated taking unreimbursed employee expenses. And that's where you would be able to take that home office or any extra expenses to be able to work from your house, maybe even internet, stuff like that. So there really isn't a lot of repercussion. Most of the time, if I have a W-2 employee that's working for somebody else that decided to be remote and take out on the road or get in their RV, I suggest to them that they talk to their W-2 employee or employer, that they get reimbursed for some of those expenses.
Okay. So there are, everybody kind of has their own certain circumstance.
Correct. And that there's no one bucket that everyone fits in.
Because I know there's circumstances now where people that are working from home but working for the same employer are now looking to write off certain areas of their house outside of a corner of the bedroom where you see so many people doing Zoom meetings. You see the pillows
but that's what they technically can't. So there's still some states that do allow that, but the federal government does not allow that. So the IRS doesn't, depending on what state you might be as your residency or your domicile, you may be allowed to on the state level, but not on the federal.
Okay. So we want to thank you. We want to thank you so much for joining us for this edition of the Camp Report Show. And
thanks
Heather,
for having me.
Where can people reach you now? Where's the best way to reach you if they have a question for you?
So my website is tax-queen.com, or you can reach me at heather@tax-queen.com.
Tax-queen, right? Not tax queen, but
tax-queen. Yes.
Little line.
Yep.
There we go. That little line. Queen. Yeah. And we'll put the address down for the book if they want to get that on Amazon. That's a physical book, right? Or it's not, or is it just a download?
There's a physical book or an electronic, either one,
Okay, either
both
one.
options.
And that tax write-off checklist is available as well?
That's on my website. Yep.
Okay, so go to the website, do that, and we'll put all those addresses down below. And you're in Texas now visiting family. Then what do you got for the next few months? What are you doing?
Well, we're in Florida.
I'm sorry.
Sunny Florida. That's okay. We're here till probably early April, visiting family, and then we'll slowly make our way back to Colorado so that we're there for summer and maybe head north. And I don't know. That's part of the lifestyle, is to not have a plan.
Not have a plan. Okay, so let us know when you come.
Yeah.
Let us know when you come back to New England.
Sure.
We'll
do that.
we'll go out somewhere in Worcester. We'll drive your fifth wheel down Highland Street.
Oh, sounds like a brilliant idea.
Make it around the Lincoln Square Rotary, which isn't there anymore. But no, we'll go to Kelly Square, which isn't there anymore. And
oh wow, they removed all the squares. What?
they didn't tear it down. They built a peanut around it. So, they're building a big baseball park down there, so they had to reconfigure.
Oh,
that.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
So
cool.
that's the story. We got folks. We're talking to the whole country. We got 2 New Englanders from the same city that are reminiscing about the city, and of which. But anyway, we want to thank Heather Ryan for being with us for this edition of the Camper Report Show, and stay with us, folks. We'll be back with more right after this.
Mike from RV Blogger here. Did you know that every trip that you plan in RV Trip Wizard automatically uploads into the GPS in the RV Life app on your phone? Just click the RV Life app, click the hamburger on the bottom, go to RV Trip Wizard. Your trips all populate. Pick the one you want, and then click the directions to the first campground. Click your RV friendly directions, and you're on your way from where you are to the campground where you want to be.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Camper Report Show. And my special guest today is Jim Phelan, founder of AirSkirts. Jim, thanks for joining us on the show. This is a creative product.
Thanks, Bob, for having me. I really appreciate it, and very interested to talk with you about it a little bit.
Tell me how you came about. I know you were a full-timer, but tell us how you came about inventing such a creative product and such a functional product.
Sure. So I guess 6 years ago or so, I was a full-time New York City resident. I sold my house, everything I owned, the standard story of people going full-time. And I bought an Airstream and, traveled the country for a couple of years. And I'm actually from Connecticut originally. I'm a New Englander. And I would be up here in the winter. And obviously you need some sort of skirt if you're going to do a Connecticut winter. So, I was typically I would do a styrofoam skirt, sort of tape it all together. It was a messy, long process. I was very unhappy with it. But what I didn't want to do is a traditional vinyl skirt. And so for those who don't know, that's a skirt where someone comes and measures your RV and then they drill, potentially 200, 300, 400 holes into it for little snaps. And then you snap on a thin piece of vinyl and stake it to the ground or way down to the ground. With a $100,000 trailer, I was not willing to do that. And I think a lot of my customers feel the same way,
It's kind of sacrilegious if you own an Airstream.
It sort of felt that way to me. So I kind of just lived with the styrofoam for a while. And then it just came to me one day. I was like, well, couldn't I just inflate something underneath there? So, I talked to some people who are in industrial design and manufacturing, and we prototyped some inflatable tubes. So those tubes basically fill up underneath the trailer and they just push up underneath the bottom. So they create this big barrier of air. So it's a big tube of air that goes around the trailer. We have some accessories too, which I can talk about. But
we'll put some pictures up of that and take some of that video. You get a great video on the website.
Oh, thanks.
Now, did you have a background in engineering?
Software engineering, but certainly not anything in the product world. So yeah, I was a software engineer for all my career. It's actually really refreshing to work with a physical product business and also to work with customers who are just way cooler. So I find that the people in the RV community are just very chill, whereas the New York City software scene was not as chill. So I'm really enjoying coming into this world a little bit.
What is your marketing philosophy for the product itself? seems to be almost factory direct, and you brought the business back to Connecticut with you, right?
Yes. Yeah. So we're based in Oakdale, Connecticut, which is a part of Montville. We're on the southeastern part of Connecticut on the shore. And yeah, we sell direct to consumer. We do have some dealerships, including some in Connecticut, that sell the product. However, we don't really have dealerships stock them on the shelves. It's a relatively expensive product. And so for a dealership to invest in the inventory, I think is unlikely in a lot of cases. So we have kind of a drop ship relationship with some dealerships. But yeah, the majority of our sales are marketed through us, through our websites. The customer places an order with us, we ship it out to them, and there's no hands-on installation required by a professional. This is something anybody can do on their own, and they can do it very quickly. So most people's setup time is around 15 minutes. Maybe the first time it takes them 30 minutes to figure everything out.
Is it safe to say, though, that each one is customized due to the size of the trailers? And we should clarify, it is not just an Airstream product. You owned an Airstream and developed it for yours, and it certainly matches Airstreams in colors. And I know you have a lot of Airstream business, but it really fits any trailer or motorhome, right?
It does, yeah. Yeah, so we have different, so I'll answer both of those questions. So no, it's definitely not for Airstreams only. I would say probably 25% of our customer base are Airstream owners. That probably just has to do with the way we came into the market. But we do a lot of fifth wheels. We do a lot of bumper pull trailers. We also do Class Cs, Class As, Class Bs. And everything is, so they're not customized per trailer. They're customized on the trailer length and height off the ground. So we have 9 different kits we sell, and those are generally speaking supposed to fit every variation of RV out there.
Okay.
The exception to that is motorized coaches. So if you have a Class A, we still sell you a kit based on the size. So if you have a 34-foot Class A, it's one price and that price doesn't change. However, we do customize some of the tubes that go into that kit to specifically fit your Class A. And that's just because there's differences in wheelbases and things where we need the tubes to fit perfectly. Whereas with a trailer, the tubes don't have to be perfect. They might be a foot in or a foot out and things are still okay.
Now, these are not just pretty little things to keep the mice and other things out. These are very functional. Talk about the functionality and what the benefits are for the buyer.
Sure. So, compared to traditional skirting, it's much faster. That's one of our big selling points. It offers a lot more insulation. So many folks don't realize this, but trapped air is actually a very good insulator. So instead of putting a thin sheet of vinyl around the perimeter of your RV, when you do that, you're basically just blocking the wind from going underneath and freezing your pipes and dissipating your heat and energy. When you put a big tube of air that's going from 22 to 34 inches, depending on the size of tube you got, that's creating a big buffer of insulation. So you have PVC, the very thick, durable PVC material on both sides, plus all that trapped air as an insulator. So that's just by design a benefit that you get kind of for free with the product. We also have some other components to the system that insulate around the tires. We call those our tire wedges. We have our stair pillows, which are meant for folks who have stairs that are welded underneath the frame. And there are some other accessories that insulate other components of the trailer or the motor coach as well.
What kind of feedback do you get from the customers themselves in terms of referencing other people? It looks like the type of product that people would like to brag about when they have it, or when you yourself pull into a campground, all of a sudden you set up in about 15 minutes, you have these silver tubes all around your RV. I suspect the guy next door comes over with a beer and says, hey, tell me about your skirting here.
That is absolutely true. So not only do I have that experience, but I have a lot of customers tell me this draws a lot of eyeballs at the campground. People come over, can you send me some cards so I can give them to people when they ask questions about it? They're certainly very unique looking and different at the campground. I mean, I think they look a lot better than people's styrofoam installations, and they're just different than what people have seen, because people are used to seeing skirts. They're used to seeing PVC skirts, sometimes hay bales, which we really advise against. But they're not used to seeing these tubes, which are really cool looking and kind of futuristic in a way. But, I don't think they're obtrusive. I think they fit with most RVs pretty well, but they definitely attract attention. So if you get AirSkirts, you will likely have people stopping by to see exactly what you're doing.
Well, it's kind of interesting because they're, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like the type of thing that it's somewhat portable. And those, if you do vinyl skirting or bales of hay or something else, you're there for the season. But there's a lot of people who full-time or who like to winter camp. And this seems like it would be a wonderful thing, even if it was just going out for a weekend.
That's absolutely true. And that's another big selling point we try to make. So because the setup and breakdown time is so quick, we have a number of customers who are actually using their trailers now in the winter when they wouldn't be previously. And these are people who are going on skiing trips, people who are going on hunting trips. They can now go up with their camper, set up really quickly, ski for a weekend, break down really quickly and take off. And they're skirted the whole time. Whereas in the past, they wouldn't have been able to do that. So maybe they got a hotel room. And this is just something that they can throw in the back of their tow vehicle and take with them. And it does set up really, really quickly. And when we say 15 minutes, we mean 15 minutes. It really only takes that long.
Talk about the insulation from a standpoint of, does the person still have to winterize their coach, or does it retain enough heat underneath that if they were going away for a weekend and the unit wasn't winterized, could they still function with the full capabilities of the RV, or would you recommend that they winterize?
They would need to leave the heat on. So these are designed to be used with the heat on in the trailer. And the reason why is the heat that's dissipating through the floor is what's creating that cushion of heat. So over the course of a weekend without the heat on in the trailer, probably enough of that would dissipate where things would start to freeze.
Well, I wasn't so much of the heat as much as the water. And in a lot of RVs have heated holding tanks. And if there's a heated holding tank with this type of a wrap, it seems like they would not have to winterize.
That's true. Yeah. So if they have heated holding tanks, or some of our customers put ancillary heaters under their trailer, if they have one of those two things, that should create enough energy under the trailer that the AirSkirts will retain that will prevent freezing pipes, generally speaking. Yeah.
So that's a good point, because a lot of people use those ceramic heaters even inside their unit because they feel propane may not be giving them enough heat in the winter.
Yeah, so one thing we've noticed is here in Connecticut, I would say we probably go down to worst case scenario, -10 Fahrenheit. I don't put a heater under my trailer, and I haven't had any problems, but we have customers in Montana who might go down to -30, let's say. So for those folks, they are putting a heater under their trailer and they're keeping the heat on in their RV. So there's some, I mean, we can't make exact guarantees about, you know, is it going to freeze in this temperature? Sometimes ancillary heat under the trailer is required. So it's a good point that you bring up.
And you can't control the wind either. So temperature is one thing, wind's another. All right, before we wrap up, you're a software engineer, now you're a product engineer. And engineers are always thinking about the next best thing. So what's your next best thing, or is there something coming in the future, or a modification, or a different RV product now that you have established yourself in the RV industry?
There is, yeah. We're working on one thing that's really cool. I'm a little hesitant to talk too much about it until knowing that it's going
to. Don't give away the corporate secret.
Well, I just want to make sure it makes it to market before I promise it. But we're experimenting with some outdoor inflatables that would be conducive to use during the summertime. We have a relatively seasonal business. People do buy these throughout the year, but the bulk of our sales happen in the September to December timeframe. So we want to create some inflatables that work as, exterior containment areas for pets, for example, for recreation. But inflatables that they deploy quickly and break down quickly. So that's what we're looking at now. We're also looking at other things. We just launched, for example, something that insulates skylights and vents. So that's a separate product that works independent of the AirSkirt system. And it's cool because it lets the sun through your skylight, but it still provides some insulation. So you're retaining some heat or cool, but you're still getting the sunlight, which is why the skylight's there in the first place.
You got it all. So the initial package comes with a compressor too, right?
It does. Yep. It's just a AC 800 watt pump. It runs forward and in reverse. The reverse is important because it makes breaking down the kit really quick. So you just suck all the air out of the tubes, fold them up, and we include a carry bag as well, and those fit right back into the carry bag. You just throw them in the back of your tow vehicle, or if you're in a coach, underneath your coach storage, and you're good to go.
Fantastic. Jim, I want to thank you very much for joining us on the Camper Report. The company is AirSkirts. The founder and managing director is Jim Phelan, and we're going to put all the contact information down below and show some pictures and some of the video, but thanks for taking time for us today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bob. Really appreciate it.